Okay, welcome to the Freedom Hustles podcast. This is episode 33. My name's John Banks. I'm over at sideincommand.com and I'm with Andy Lehman, as always, from the freedomskillsacademy.com. So, we had a bit of a week off last week, various bits and pieces, but back tonight. So, anyway, Andy, how are you doing? You all right?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Weather's warmer, which is always nice. So how are you doing?
Yeah, much the same. It's definitely better now, and it's getting a bit lighter, and evenings are drawing out.
Yeah.
So anyway, on to tonight's discussion. Talking a little bit about why you should not compare to others especially when it comes to this, the sort of online world, and trying to sort of carve out a little bit of a side hustle, or whatever it is you're trying to do, building a small online business, or anything like that. Why you shouldn't really compare to others. It can be quite a bit of a sort of trap, can't it, to sort of fall into and sort of go down that road, I think.
It is, if you do it wrong. There's comparing yourself, and then there's observing people and trying to copy them, so that you can sort of emulate them. But comparing to people can be extremely dangerous, because basically what you're seeing is the surface. It's like the tip of the iceberg. You don't actually know what's involved, or what's in the background, or what's below the level.
Yeah.
Do you? I mean,
no.
A perfect example of this was many years ago. I always remember seeing, when we were younger, there was some guy driving around in a rather expensive car. And I can remember saying to someone, I think it was my good lady, he's like, how can he afford that car? Why can't we, sort of thing? And we was just sort of discussing it. And she said, well, to be fair, you don't know if he's on hire purchase and debted up to the eyeballs.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, oh, yeah. So in many ways, you can often see somebody and make a comparison, and you could be well off the mark, because they could be actually in a far worse position than you are. It's just that they appear to be different.
Yeah, I think no, totally. Yeah, I mean, and I think there's a whole load of variables in there that can change the way a person works, and change the way a person reacts to things that go wrong, or which always is going to happen. I mean, let's just say, I don't know, say you've got 5 people in a room, and you task them all with each of them making 10 ebook sales on Amazon or something, and the first person to do it, they would all do it completely differently. Even if you had a step-by-step blueprint in front of them, they would all do it, completely differently. And you don't know, people's time is different. You've got, you say you've got a single guy living at home with his parents, he does a night shift, and then he has 12 hours in the day to do whatever he wants, or you got to compare that to a single mum trying to raise a family of 3 kids on her own, and hustling, bustling, doing a part-time job, doing the school runs, and maybe only got an hour a day to herself. They're not even comparable. You should not compare that. That's why it's a bit unfair to sort of say, well, how come if you can do it, then so can you. But I don't think people should, we're not saying make excuses, but what we are saying is, I definitely do it now. I don't measure my results against anyone else's, because there's that saying, isn't there? One person's, your chapter 1 is not comparable to someone else's chapter 12, and like I say, for various different reasons.
Well, you've touched on a couple of great points there. Things that I was going to bring up is, like you said, the single lad living with his parents. His parents might even be subsidising him, so he's probably not even paying any lodge. So every penny that he's got, all his security is covered. He's not going to lose his house. So every penny he's got can go into advertising. Like you said, the single mother who's got 3 kids, who's got a mortgage or rent to pay, he's probably only got like a £5 left at the end of the month to be able to spend. Yeah. But I also know that there was, I don't know if many people do it now, but there's been a couple of internet marketers who were very successful. They moved from places like the United States and went to live in places like Thailand, where basically the rent of half-decent apartment somewhere in Thailand with a, in a complex with a swimming pool is probably like a fraction of what it is to have a place in the United States. I mean, they've gone and given themselves an opportunity to be able to spend more time and more money on what it is they want to do. But like you say, someone here who decides they want to be an internet marketer or write ebooks, do stuff on Kindle, got a family and a wife to consider, they can't just suddenly up sticks and move them all over to Thailand to find a cheap place to live.
Yeah, that's right. I know. Yeah, it's exactly that. And then another one you often see is, which is why I never do this, because it is completely pointless. I say I never do. I rarely do it because it's completely pointless. And that is when people post how much money they've made, because how do you don't know any aspect of that whatsoever. If say like me and you, like you say, when we were running ads, we were making money from AdSense, we were doing all right. We would do it. Some days it was like, several hundred in one day. And then by the end of the month, it would be like several thousand. And we could put that figure up and say, look, this is how much money we made in AdSense this month. What that doesn't tell you is how much money we spent on ads. Because so it might be like £14,500 on AdSense. Wow, gee, that's mad. But what you don't see is like, that was a lot of work. That was up till, spending a lot of hours, churning out the material, spending a lot of money on ads, spending a lot of money on ads that failed, and that's just one example. And I see it all the time. Another one I used to see all the time was people posting up when I used to do Amazon FBA. That was a classic one. People used to love posting up their results, Amazon FBA, this is what I've done this month. And it would be like, I don't know, 6,500. And then you have another guy go, oh, I don't know how you get that. I've only made 1,500 this month. But what people don't realize, the guy that made 1,500, he could have actually made more in terms of profit than the other people. They might only be making 10%. They might be churning out, running ads. Their markup might only be 10%, whereas he might be flipping stuff, that he's buying for a couple of quid and flipping for 50 quid and doing really well on. And that's why it creates this false, it's not the right thing to do. You shouldn't do it. You should have your own, having masterminds and hanging around with people that are positive and even doing the same thing as you. That's a great move. And that's a really good thing to do, definitely. But comparing yourself to, especially on social media, you don't even know these guys, let's face it, it's completely pointless.
Well, like you say, there's not enough transparency because, like you said, someone who says they've made 14 grand in advertising revenue, that's brilliant. But like you said, you don't know if they spent 12 grand in advertising revenue. They've actually probably had a very bad month. You know what I mean? It's it sounds like they've had a great month. 14,000, that's brilliant. But 12 grand that's probably gone to Facebook and Google Ads to get the traffic, and so they've actually, they're not working in a day job. They've made 2 grand over that month, but it certainly isn't as glorious as it looks because there's no transparency there, and so you don't know. Like you say, you're comparing yourself against an image which isn't true. And I'll tell you a true story. I used to work for a specific company. The guy was a copywriter, internet marketer. The guy, and as with all copywriting, when they're selling products, you'd often say things like, "I started in a small room in the back of my house. I made a desk out of a table and got my first computer," and it makes it sound very much rags to riches, and that they've they've knuckled up and now he's a multimillionaire. And you sit there and you think, you admire them and you think, oh, where did they get? It wasn't until I was actually working there and I was working inside the building, we were talking, that I found out that previously he had a business which he had sold. And he walked away with near enough just under £1 million from the sale of the business. I think it was like £800,000. Yeah. So he was, he was in a position where he didn't have sort of bills to worry about. He had a nice big chunk of cash in his, and he was able to finance his business to a point that most people can't. They would buy a product off him for several £1,000s, and then it would say, right, you've learned the lesson. And it'd be a case of, right, now you need to spend another 10 grand doing this. And they'd be like, Christ, how did you manage to do that? Well, I can tell you how. He had £800,000 in his bank, which he never really told anybody about. So he was starting from a point that half these other people who were comparing themselves to him, they couldn't even touch.
Yeah, I know. It's exactly that. I know. I mean, we even just about. Yeah. Can we talk about this? Yeah, I think we can talk about this. So we sort of dabbled on a. I mean, we haven't. We may come back to it, but for example, like sports trading and you know and that sort of thing. I mean, we ran some experiments, didn't we, the last sort of month, and
Yeah.
we done all right. You know, we had a great run, and we you know we done okay. We I think we tripled or you know even some maybe even quadrupled our starting bank. But because we were testing, you were a bit conservative. We weren't going to, you know, we wanted to play it a bit easy. We were still sort of learning the game, and it was very much a, you know, we were learning loads about it all. And but we took sort of like £200 up to like £800. I think that's sort of realistic, isn't it? And then, you know, and then obviously things took a bit of a turn, and then we've parked the idea for now. But it was a nice little one. But during that time, we learned so much about what it would be like. Let's just say you could invest £50,000 into this, right? What we were doing, you would be home dry now. You wouldn't even be worrying about it at all because you had so much more protection about when things go wrong that you wouldn't really care. Whereas in our case, because we tested with a small pot, we didn't want to risk a big amount of money because it was very new to us. We were very conservative. Therefore, we were sort of going, I don't think we should do this trade. And we were taking it easy a bit. Whereas if you had a load, let's say, like you said, if it in the case of that bloke you just talked about then, if he had an £800,000 bankroll to start his businesses with, you know, you're in a damn sight better position than someone that literally is just starting from scratch and is worried about, you know, I can't really afford to lose this. You know, people that are, you know, they say all this, oh, all you need on the online business is, you know, a couple of £100. You do, but you also need a lot of time and effort. You know, let's not beat around the bush. It don't just happen overnight. And that's why sometimes it's harmful, I think, when you see these images of, you know, I don't know, screenshots of, you know, PayPal accounts with stupid amount of money in and claims that they've only just started. It may be true, but what you don't know is that they've just spent a hell of a lot on kickstarting the whole thing in terms of they could have bought, you know, 1 million impressions on Facebook ads or something, which someone that's just starting out with a very, very, very modest budget would never be able to do that. So you really do have to be careful when you compare.
Yeah, there's a saying, I can't remember who said it now, but he said basically it goes along the lines of it's taken a lot of hard work to be an overnight success. And if you ever watch those, used to be a TV program before they were famous, you know, you often see there's a big name movie star who's just seemed to appear to come out of nowhere. But then when you actually watch the program, you'll see for the last 10, 14 years, they've been doing the circuits around the clubs and working on TV adverts and working on going for every audition possible. You know, they've been working hard to get to that point, and boom, they just suddenly seem to be like an overnight success. It takes a lot of a lot of work to get to that point. And that, as you say, it's one of those things that you just don't see.
No, and the same as the image of the iceberg. You know, the tip of the iceberg is like, you know, the sort of success, you know, the wealth or, you know, the time, freedom, the happiness or whatever that comes with it. And then underneath the sort of sea level, there's this massive chunk, you know, which was everything else that's gone with it. You know, all the hours spent, the hard work, you know, in some cases, you might have had friendships that have, you know, broken down, and, you know, even relationships is hard to say, but, you know, because it is hard, you know, it puts strain on things. If you're trying to do these things and, you know, you're up till, you know, you work a normal job and then after that you want to spend time on your own kind of your side hustle business or your dream or your passion or whatever it is you're doing, you know, it can have an impact on those things. But, you know, and that's why, you know, like we said, circumstances are different, aren't they? Circumstances are different for everyone. Like you say, you never know. You don't know what's going on in people's minds. You know, you don't know what's going on in people's lives when you walk past them on the street. You know, people have got hidden illnesses just because they look all right. You know, there's the hidden illnesses which can affect, you know, I know quite well. something that, you know, yourself, and not yourself, but, you know, your good lady, and something that I've suffered from over the years. And,
you
know, I try not to let it affect me, but it does, you know, and there's no two ways about it. You can't hide from it.
Going back to what you said earlier, though, about the bloke living at his parents, being single, has reminded me of we made quite a bit of money out of viral news websites, a bit of fun websites based on Viral Nova. And Viral Nova was a website that which eventually sold, I believe, for about $100 million to a media company. And you know, we were nowhere near that like that at all, and we were trying to work hard on it, doing other things. And it wasn't until later on when I saw an interview and I read about the guy, DeLonghi, I can't remember his surname now, but he'd basically done something previous to Viral Nova, had sold it, banked quite a lot of money, and I think he was living at his parents at the time, and because he didn't have a job and he had this money in his bank, he was working sort of around 16 hours on Viral Nova.
Mad, wasn't it?
Yeah, so he was locked away in his room doing this, and then when it started to get some traction, he went and then hired a couple of other people, and so he built this website, which at one point was reportedly sort of generating over $500,000 per month in advertising revenue.
Yeah.
And then eventually sold for $100 million. But as you said, there's I'm not saying he was single, but there was a guy who's basically, you know, cash rich, holed up in his bedroom, 16 hours away, beavering away, no distraction, nothing else getting in his way. There's no way that a person who's got a family, or like you say, someone who's got a partner with an invisible illness who needs some attention, there's no way you can compare to that, even if you tried.
No, not even close. And that's what we talk about. We've talked about that before, haven't we, on a previous podcast about, you know, the 1 hour a day method. You know, that guy there doing 16 hours a day, in 2 days, he could do the equivalent of what we often preach about people being able to achieve in like a month. So, and there you go. That's a month versus 2 days. So it's not even comparable. But if you set your targets right, and I think this is important, I think if you set your own targets right, not what anyone else is doing, doesn't even matter if you're in a Facebook group with everyone else. Let's say you're doing a course, or you're doing you quite often, if you buy these courses, they take, you join their Facebook group and everyone chats away and, I've done this much this month and this, that, and the other. Don't even compare to those people, because you don't know, you haven't got a clue what the situations are. So set your own targets, whether your target is, I don't know, to get 500 subscribers on your email list in the first 3 months. That's yours. Someone else, that'll probably be, I want to get 500 subscribers in the first week, right? But you don't know that person that's going to get 500 in the first week. He might have £10,000 bankroll it. Okay. That's easy if you got that. But, you know, it's not if you're only working an hour a day and you've got to churn out a load of free content on a blog for the next 3 months. They're both the same end result, but you just get there in different times. You know, your journey is different. So, you know, that's what I think, you know, you sort of, you got to be a bit, just the way you set your goals, I think, is you've got to learn from other people, and you've got to have a healthy interest in what they do and learn from them, and, you know, sort of keep stock of what other people are doing. But really, at the end of the day, the only results that really matter are to you. And like you said, you've got to set your goals accordingly and then stick to them. There's just no way that you've got to be realistically. I mean, like you said, it's all down to sort of variables, time, cash, and freedom levels, I suppose. So if you're writing a book and your mate's writing a book, so if there's two people wanting to write a book and they're both going to try and write a book that's 200 pages long, but you are working a job that demands at least 10 hours a day, you've got an hour's travel, then you've got family to deal with. If your mate never got married, you know, and he lives just up the road, and his job is only 8 hours, takes him 5 minutes to work there, already he's got a head start on you, no matter what you do. So you can never compare yourself to him, because it's not, basically it's like science, isn't it? It's physics. You can't beat somebody who's got far more time and effort than you in that respect. So, I mean, the main results really that matters is what you do. So, you know, by all means, say that you're going to try and write
a book within the next couple of months, focus on that. If somebody else does it within a week, you just sort of applaud them, say, well done, but don't beat yourself up about it, because there's just no way of knowing unless you actually ask them. There's just so many variables that puts them ahead of you.
And then we have we've shared though, haven't we? Some tips and methods on, perhaps some ways in which you can get a little bit more done. For example, then you just shared the guy about this. Let's say, for example, you're writing a book. We've talked about some tools. There are some tools that can help out, and there are things that you can do, to kind of get a bit more of an edge and try and get a bit more time, to be able to do these things. Like, you've mentioned it before on previous episodes about, things like the narrating tool and, being able to speak and stuff. Because you used to write sometimes when, the classic ones when you used to dictate blog articles, didn't you? And then send them over to your client and then he would type them up. And I used to do a podcast when I walked to work. So that there are ways in which you can help the situation, but again, you just got to be a bit, what you say.
I mean, the main point is that what the whole idea of the podcast is that it's dangerous and it's damaging to your mindset. It's damaging to your motivation and your discipline if you keep comparing yourself to other people. Because if you keep seeing people, beating you and doing stuff quicker or doing things better, you're just going to keep sort of making yourself more depressed and miserable. And the fact is, like I said earlier at the beginning, you can look at someone and think, oh God, look, he's got a sports car, he's doing great. And you can find out he's probably in more debt than you because he's got it on hire purchase. It could be an ego purchase, as they call it. So his life is probably actually working really hard to pay for this car and he's struggling, where you might have more freedom and you could actually be in a far better position. And like the guy I used to work for, who, I thought kind of started from scratch, small office, old door, desk and everything, but you find out he was virtually a millionaire before he started. So he was, time and cash free to basically do everything he wants. So comparing yourself to other people is just damaging. And if that's what you do, then I suppose really the only suggestion is that you stop.
Yeah, I think as well, what you touched on just then was motivation. That can be a big killer when you start doing this. I'm never going to get there. Oh, blimey, have you seen what they've done? My advice is just don't. If you see that type of crap on Facebook or social media or Instagram or wherever it is you are, you do not even look at it. Just scroll straight past it. It does nothing. It will not. It doesn't give you it. Somewhat, people, it's great to see what they're all doing, but eventually it will start eating away. If you're not achieving that, it will start eating away. So you just skim straight past it. And like you say, motivation is, if you start to lack the motivation and you start to lose the confidence and you start to lose your sort of drive as to, I'm not really achieving it, I'm not getting there, I'm not seeing the results that all these are getting, it can finish you off. You might just throw the towel in. And how many times have we talked about that before, where people throw the towel in, little do they know that they may only be a short few steps away from actually, making that first sale or, landing that first client or, I don't know, selling that first website or whatever. You just, people don't realize how sometimes they quit so close to the edge, and it could be down to they're just comparing a bit too much, and trying to think they should be ahead of perhaps where they are,
The other thing as well to remember is that when a lot of people are sharing stuff on, say, social media about how much they make or what they're doing, but they're basically, there's like three things. They're either one, trying to get social proof, or they're selling a product and they're trying to get you interested into them. You'll be like, wow, you made 20 grand. I would like to know that. Yeah, come in. I've got this product to sell. It's like a form of sort of pre-warming, pre-selling.
Yeah.
The other type of people are basically probably influencers who are just trying to, I mean, we've seen with Instagram, a lot of photographs are quite easily staged. But they're just to try and show you that they're something. So that's probably even nothing more than an ego thing. They could be could be spending all their time crying and miserable, because no one ever basically puts photographs on Facebook of them being miserable, having a crap day. You might do a status say, "I've had a day from hell," but you never really take photographs unless it's extremely bad. You don't share the crap meal you've had from
reel, innit?
Yeah, you always do like the nice, wonderful. Look what I'm having a meal at the Ritz or something. With champagne. Oh, aren't I wonderful?
But so I'm a chronic depressant, and I want to go home and like sit in a corner and cry myself to sleep afterwards.
So a lot of the stuff that you're seeing is either done to get sales, to get followers, or basically just to sort of stroke their poor ego, I suppose. Yeah. So a lot of it's not even truthful, is it? Not
no,
manufactured.
Yeah, of course it is. But I mean, the other thing I just want to touch on before we sort of finish off, and that is, which again I think we have spoke about before, which really helps, and that's getting an accountability partner. So it could be in the form of a close friend that kind of is on the same wavelength, so they know what you're doing. They may even be doing a similar thing. It could be in our case, like a business partner, so people that work together, or you've ran projects before and you've worked on stuff before, so it's like what we do. Or it could just be someone that maybe even that you've met completely randomly in one of these, I don't know, you say you're in a group or you're in a mastermind or whatever, and you've just perhaps hit it off with someone else in there, and they might be on the same journey as you. You never know. They might be on a similar path. You never know. They might be a parent. They might have kids at home. They might have, working a job, and they might only have an hour or 2 hours a day. They're the type of people that are on the same wavelength as you. So then it's fine, because you can kind of keep in touch. You can kind of keep each other going and motivate. And in them cases, it's probably okay to compare every now and again, because you are at the same starting blocks. You know what I mean? The surroundings and the settings and all that are very similar. So, yeah.
The other thing as well is that they can keep you grounded as well, because if you start going off saying, "Well, I've not done this compared to that bloke," and they can turn around and say, "Yeah, but you're obviously getting yourself a bit wound up here. You've got a family to deal with. He hasn't." Yeah. So sometimes the accountability partner can also bring you back down to earth and stop you from going too far down the rabbit hole of despair, so to speak. Accountability partners, brilliant. It's like me and you the other night. We had a quick chat, didn't we, just to try and keep ourselves on track of what we're doing with our plans.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do when you're in your own little world, in your own little office, looking at the world online. You do sort of start to drift, and then it's always good to have a quick chat and say, "Well, we're sticking to this and we're doing this."
Rein it back in a bit. Everyone calm down. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's kind of. I think we've sort of hit a few points there tonight. Not really much to add for me, really. I mean, other than like we say, we talked about it. Circumstances could be different. Skill sets could be different. Free time could be different. Plus
cash flow. Yeah, a whole load of things.
So just be a bit careful if you ever go down the road of, comparing to others. I seldom do it, hardly ever do it at all now, because, you kind of stick to your own plan. I think that's kind of the best way, really.
Just to end up from me, basically, is the psychological sort of aspect of it. You've got to remember is that your moods and your motivation is often governed by the things that you think and observe. You are the gatekeeper to your mind. So if you spend your time watching other successful people who are far ahead of you, and you're not taking into consideration the variables that could be behind that, or you just keep comparing yourself to them and thinking you're a failing, then you are basically sort of putting more hurdles in front of you. You're slowing your own progress down, and you're bringing yourself to a stop. Yeah. And that's the one thing you don't want to do. You've got to make sure that you have a bit of a perspective. And just like I said, the most important results in what you're doing is your own results.
Yeah.
Forget everybody else.
That's a great point. Okay, brilliant point to end with. All right, then. So thanks very much for listening. My name's been John Banks. You can find me over at signingcommand.com. I've been with...
I'm Andy Lehman from freedomskillsacademy.com, and thank you again for listening, and we shall speak to you in the next episode.
Thanks very much.